welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
I thought this moment would never get here. My name is Diana, and I'm an addict. And I will. I'll try my very best. Yes, I did lose to Billy in Pinochle last night. Danny and I were kind to them because he's a beginner. And we called him the newcomer at the table. So, anyways. First of all, I want to thank the committee for having me come up here and share my experience and my story. It is truly an honor to be here. And I want to thank the readers that anointed this podium with their tears. There's a reading in our literature that tells us that our gratitude speaks very eloquently when we speak from our heart. And speaking from our heart is when we shed our tears, and when we show our feelings, and when we allow that part of us that's so afraid to be vulnerable. And I want to thank you for getting up here and showing that soft side that we all have. And I was looking at the banner out there, and it said spiritual speaker. And my lovely friends Karen and Danny came running up to me and says, "But we know better, don't we?" But I want to kind of share a little bit, shed some light on an illusion that I think most of us have in terms of what spirituality really is. I thought when I got to this program of Narcotics Anonymous that to be spiritual, I had to learn how to be, that person that's, and always in the zone. I also used to watch people in the program, and I would go, the quiet ones, they're the ones that are spiritual. And I've always been the one that had the voice. I've always been the one that has never had a quorum bringing my voice forward and speaking my truth. So I knew that being spiritual was something that I was never going to obtain. Now, for me, recovery is like peeling an onion. And, it's taken me many, 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 many layers and a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of energy to really get down to the core of who I am. And I got to tell you that in God's eyes, I am a perfect, pure human being. And that I'm a spiritual being that's trying to live a spiritual life one day at a time. And what I realized was that giving myself the freedom to be a human being was the most spiritual thing I could do for myself. Because by giving myself that freedom, what I've been able to understand is that I no longer have to strive for that perfection that I thought I had to have in order to fit in order to be a part of this life. And what I've realized is that by allowing myself to be human is really where the healing begins. And with that being said, I'll sit down now. No. First of all, I want to welcome the newcomer. you do not have to use ever, ever again. And I also want to thank all the other speakers here this weekend. It's been, wow. The speakers this weekend have been amazing. I've heard a wide spectrum of stories and experiences, and I just want to thank you for that, because you really helped my weekend. You helped me to get in touch with my higher power, and you really helped me to get centered and to come up here and share my story. You know, sometimes, especially Carl, God, when Carl was singing, man, I felt inadequate. I was like, damn, I want to get up there and start singing. So here it goes, Richard. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Richard. Happy birthday to you. That's the best Marilyn Monroe can do these days. You know, we celebrate clean time around here, but Richard is celebrating 61 years being on this planet. And that's a miracle. And I wanted to acknowledge that, because you're a friend and I love you. And I've never sang at a podium before. You know what? That was freeing, Carl. Man, I just experienced some freedom up here. Anyways, all kidding aside, I love Narcotics Anonymous. I have 22 years clean. Yes. And I know I would love to stand up here and say that I got clean when I was 10, but I was a little older than that. You know, I love the fact that younger people are coming into the rooms, because I was 21 when I got here, and I was plagued with getting clean with all the old folks, you know, the dope fiends, all in, you know, fresh from the penitentiary, and here I was, this cute little 21-year-old running around, you know, and I knew I fit in immediately. The first thing, you know, I'm from Rhode Island, okay? I grew up in the woods of Rhode Island, and my first drug of choice was fantasy. I used to fantasize about everything. Fantasy for me was a way for me to escape what I was living through. You know, and when I first got to this program, I thought it was because of the childhood that I had, or the parents that I had, or the stuff that I, endured when I was a kid. And I blamed all that exterior stuff when I got here, thinking that that's why I was an addict. And Philip, you reminded me of something this morning when you were talking about that man doing that exercise, about how resentment, how, when we heal from, resenting somebody, it's amazing. Once we start healing that, we can get to a place over here that says, well, that was a long time ago. Why am I exerting so much energy on that? But when I got here, I was so consumed with feeling like a victim. I felt like a victim. I lived like a victim. I spewed my stuff like a victim. And I was angry. I was bitter. And I was one of those addicts that walked in with my arms in front of my body, with a look on my face and an attitude that just spewed, stay away from me. And what I've come to understand is that our character defects really are our shield of armor. And for me, every character defect or survival skill that I honed when I was out there in active addiction, I brought into these rooms. And I was angry. I was so angry. And it took me years around here to peel away the layers of stuff to get to where I'm at today. And I got to tell you that I am so grateful that the layers are continuing and that I still am participating in the process. And what I would like to do this morning is share a little bit about my experience since I've been here. Because we all know what it's like to get loaded. We all know what it's like to do whatever it takes to get that next one. I was just as addicted to the lifestyle as I was to the substance. Because all of it helped me to escape the one thing that I had no tools to deal with, and that was living life on life's terms and feeling my feelings. And when I got here, I would hear people share about certain things that would just click, it would just trigger certain things in me that go, yeah. And, and that's the beauty of this program, is that we all come in here. And the beauty of this convention is that we had so many different speakers with so many different stories. And, each and every single one of us has been able to connect on some level with at least one of the speakers this weekend. And there's another thing that I love about this program more than anything, is that this program and the Steps of Narcotics Anonymous are custom made for every single one of us. And that I love that we all come in here with a different perspective, of life, life experiences, a God of our understanding, all of that. It just amazes me how no matter what my sponsee's belief is in a higher power versus what mine is, the steps are custom made for her. And that by working with a sponsee and sharing my experience, strength, and hope, that sponsee or that newcomer can experience the miracle. I think Bob shared something last night about a spiritual awakening when we get clean. Was it you that said that? I can't remember. Yeah, they're all blending in. One speaker said something about a spiritual experience when we get clean, and I would like to believe that they're miracles that we finally get to see. And I thought when I first arrived here that a miracle was something, just like we all do when we do our first fifth step and we're waiting for those fireworks and that, that elation happening, and if it doesn't, then it's like, I must have done something wrong type of thing. I thought that's what miracles were supposed to be, something, gigantic and, fireworks and all of that. And I want to share with you the first miracle that I was able to recognize. I had 90 days clean. I was sitting in a treatment center. I was writing on my third step. And I was writing about a God that I wasn't connected to. It wasn't tangible. But what I started to write on was I started to write on the things that I saw in other people in the rooms, that sparkle in their eye, that sense of honesty when they get up to the podium. To me, that was just like mind-boggling because I'd never experienced honesty before. I always lied, cheated, and stole, and everybody around me did the same thing. And I remember sitting there writing on my third step, and there was a sense that I felt within myself that told me one thing, and it said, Diana, you're going to be okay. That's a miracle. For us to be able to get to that place of having that sense that I'm going to be okay. And the other miracle when I was a newcomer that I was able to recognize was that I was sitting in this treatment center and I was peeling, I don't know how many flipping potatoes, a lot of potatoes. And I was sitting there peeling these potatoes, and I was by myself. And I was by the back gate, and I was just sitting there. And the disease of addiction came in and said, hey, you could leave right now and nobody would even know. You could leave, cop, and come back. And I was able to say, no, not today. That's a miracle. And those are the little miracles that I really believe keep us here, that makes this whole thing, this whole process tangible for us. Because I never, ever had that before I got to this program. I was raised by an addict man I'm an identical twin. My father used to prop my twin sister and I when we were 12 and 13 up on bar stools. I used to I don't even need to tell you what I used to do. I used to, my dad used to prop us on bar stools and, taught us how to be the seductress little teenage girls. And then my father would pinch my cheek and tell me that I was the apple of his eye and that he loved me. Love to me was disgusting. I trusted no one when I got here. And the truth to me was so overwhelming that I was that addict that got so loaded that I was oblivious to my reality, because that was the only way I could deal. I threw away every dream I ever had behind my active addiction. I threw away every ounce of desire of having a better way to live through my active addiction. And by coming to these rooms and working these steps and having a sponsor and having a higher power in my life, the options in my life are endless. But I also believe that these steps can go as deep as you want them to go. And we sell ourselves short time and time again. I don't know how many times I hear people, say that, or they stop at 5, thinking that as long as they get some of the little secrets out that it's over with. Let me tell you, it's been a series of many times over and over again working the steps for me to become the person that I am. Thank you. And that's what I want to try to share about. Now, there's been certain things in my recovery that have been catalysts for me in terms of me surrendering to whatever. Unfortunately, most addicts are that those little mechanical toys that you see in the toy shop that they try to sell you. You wind them up, they put them in a box, and they always go banging against the walls. Okay. That is pretty much how I am as a person. It's like I want to go my own way. I want to try to figure it out myself. I want to bang my head against that wall 1,000,000 times. And then I go, that's what my sponsor was trying to tell me. I have a friend in recovery that she uses this analogy, which is so appropriate for us in terms of change. Change to an addict is like water skiing on cement. Just visualize that for a minute. We do not know how to do change. I certainly don't. And it's taken me years around here to change a lot of things. When I got clean, I thought all I had to do was get clean. I didn't know that I had to stop the deviant little behavior to help me feel better about who I was. It took me a long time to realize that it was my behavior that made me feel bad. It wasn't necessarily the disease of addiction. It was that shortcoming that I have in terms of acting out on that character defect. When I start acting out on my character defects, that's when the disease has me, and that is when I start feeling really bad about who I am. And when I learn how to, I don't even like the word right, the right thing. When I learn how to do things that are within my spiritual realm of being here on this earth, I feel better about who I am. Now, it doesn't mean that I have my own rule book and I've made up my own spiritual principles. It just means that, what works for you may not work for me, and what you believe may not be what I believe. So, that's the beautiful thing. But there's one thing that I do believe is that the principles that are written in our literature, I try to live today. I try to live it to the best of my ability. I don't always do a great job at it, but I try. And I show up and I step into my life. How I got to this program, and I always share this because I never want this experience to be in vain, is that I'm an identical twin. Her name is Donna. She was the person that I could count on no matter what. She was the person that held my hand and I held hers. And she died behind this disease. I miss her more today than I did 23 years ago when she died. But when she died, there was a part of me that saw something that I never saw before. And that was another miracle. It was like the denial of what this, the denial protects the disease of addiction. And when she died, the denial was broken, for even if it was just 10 seconds. When I was in that room with her, I knew that if I didn't do something different, I was going to die just like her. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to die. But I didn't know any way else. I didn't have any tools. And so I grabbed my father, which was the biggest mistake. I chased my father like a drug. I grabbed my father, and my father and I decided to go back to Rhode Island. And my father and I went on this run that I'm still amazed that I survived. I ran as hard as I could for 9 months, and I came back to California, and I got clean April 23rd, 1982. And I am one of those people that Carl had raise your hand. I have not found it necessary to use since I walked in to the doors. Now, the reason why I share about Donna is it's not to get anybody on a bummer or anything like that, but I never want, and I try to acknowledge when addicts die, because I never want their experience to be in vain, because that's truly why I stay here. It's because I want to live, and this is a program of living. It's not a program of relapse. It's not a program of dying. It's not a program of running amok. It's a program of living in recovery. And my twin sister died behind this disease because she never found it. So if you're new here, you have an amazing opportunity. But the sad reality is that most of us have a difficult time rising up to that opportunity and seizing it. And the people that stay here for the long haul, like me, at 22 years, I have learned how to seize the opportunity time and time again. I acknowledge that getting long-term recovery is hard. And, as a newcomer, you are the most important person in this room. But let me tell you, the old-timers need to be honored and respected because we worked our asses off to get here. That's all I'll say. And the reason why I say that is because, in every area, the old-timers come up and, we share our experience. It's like, oh, man. Not that again, or, we need new blood. Yeah, we do. We need new blood, we need new ideas, but, I'm a firm believer if it works, don't fix it. And I want to, I don't know why I shared that. I've never shared that at a podium before, but I think the reason why I share that is because I finally acknowledged that I've worked really hard. And it takes courage to change. It takes courage to stay here one day at a time. And I want to share some events that have happened in my recovery that have been amazing crossroads for me and have been amazing transitions. When I had about 2 years clean, I met a guy. This guy was very wealthy. And I'm a welfare kid. So I got caught up. Here's a new character defect. If anybody's working on a 6-step, here's a new one to put on the list. I was acting out an avarice. Averist. And avarice, what that means is that the desire for riches, according to the definition of Webster. But it also means the desire to have something that I don't have, or thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, or thinking, where's mine? All of those things played a big part in the decision-making process I made when I said I would marry this man. What a disaster. 2 years into the marriage, I was filing bankruptcy. I was filing criminal charges because he was using my Social Security number, my credit cards, all of that, behind him relapsing and leaving a huge financial path of destruction. So I'm a firm believer that if you don't address your character defects, they'll be addressed for you. You know, and I walked away from that marriage, and mind you, I told you I was still that addict that was like this, with the look and the attitude and the arms folded in front of me, and I was still that person. There wasn't much that had changed on the outside. There was a lot of stuff happening in the inside. I was finally starting to get in touch with some feelings, but I did not know how to share with you the soft part of who I am. You know, and at that time, I was forced to surrender. That was my first major surrender in recovery. I had 5 years clean. I was sitting in a new area that I didn't really know anybody because I wasn't reaching out. I just filed, a divorce from a man that I didn't really know. And I was sitting there screaming at the top of my lungs to a God one more time. Look at that. As a newcomer, I didn't know God. And I didn't understand or know God at 5 years. One more time, I'm screaming on the top of my lungs to a God that I didn't understand. And one more time, I felt like I was the victim. Why me? Why is this happening to me? And what I got in touch with was that none of this was happening to you, Di. These were all decisions that you made all by yourself. And that's the key word, all by yourself. I wasn't, I got in touch with that oh, wait a minute, a sponsor. A sponsor, is not only someone that you go to read your step just to get it over with so you know that you're going through the motions. The sponsor is also there to say, hey, can I run this past you? What do you think? Do you think I'm on the right path, or can I get a second opinion here? And I got in touch with just a glimpse, of, well, Di, if you were using your sponsor, maybe this would have turned out a little differently. And there was like a surrender that happened that night, because I went to a meeting and I raised my hand. It was the first time in my recovery that I said, ouch. What an amazing concept. Ouch, I'm hurting, and I don't know what to do. But since I really wasn't using my sponsor at the time, I decided to go back to Rhode Island, thinking that was a good thing, a good idea. And I went back to Rhode Island, and I want to share this because my father, you know how we are as addicts, we go through peaks and valleys in our active addiction. Well, my father, when I left Rhode Island, was doing very well in his life, and when I went back to Rhode Island at 5-6 years clean, my father was sitting in a tent in the middle of a field, picking out his teeth one by one because he was losing them from, his active addiction. And I was sitting there watching my father, and I was just like blown away. But I pitched a tent right next to him. I had a daddy long legs in my tent that was taking care of the mosquitoes. Stayed in this field for 2 weeks with my dad, and I watched the addiction be alive and well in somebody that I knew very well. And it was an amazing thing that happened for me. But what did happen while I was back there was that my little brother was in treatment. And he got out the day before I was supposed to come back to California. And I picked him up, took him to the beach, and I poured out my heart and soul to my brother. I gave him every ounce of information I had about recovery. The poor kid. I was jamming it into him because I wanted him to get it, man. I wanted him to get it. And I got in touch with Powerless that day because he used. And he hung himself. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that it didn't matter who I hung out with, It didn't matter if I was popular. It didn't matter if I hung with the winners. It didn't matter if I listened to the best speaker tapes in the world. It didn't matter if I was a good speaker. None of that mattered. If I was not doing the work, and if I was not actively participating in my own recovery, then I will remain powerless. And that it truly is about our personal work, our personal search, and our personal journey that matters. And that will ensure your recovery. Not going to meetings, not being of service, not hanging out with the winners. It's all the other stuff that goes along with it. Working the steps, getting a God in our lives, learning about humility, being of service, going to meetings, and giving it away. And I got it that day when I buried my brother, that I had to pick up every single piece that I was given as a newcomer, because we get the formula as soon as we walk in the door. There's no magic potion that we can conjure up to make this any different or make it work any faster or any of that. The formula we're given the minute we walk into the door, and that is 90 meetings in 90 days. Get a God in your life, get a sponsor, go to meetings, and allow us to love you until you can love yourself. And when I came back from Rhode Island, I made some drastic changes. I got a new sponsor. I started working the steps diligently. I started participating in my recovery, and I wanted this thing for the first time in my life. I wanted it bad. Up until 5 years, I still wanted it, but I wasn't attached to it. I used to call myself the detachment queen. I was afraid to death to attach to anything, because I always felt, my disease always told me that if you attach yourself to something, you're going to get disappointed. And I didn't want to be disappointed anymore. So I learned how to be that mechanical robot, going through the motions, putting the smile on my face, all of that, just to make it. And I was a social butterfly, and I did all of that so people wouldn't ask me, how are you? Because I was afraid that somebody would ask me, how are you? And I would, be a blubbering idiot. Somebody told me just recently that, when we're a basket case, quote unquote, when we say that, oh, I'm a basket case, all it is just attaching yourself to the feelings. You're just giving yourself permission to feel it. And it's amazing how we put negative connotations on certain things that are really the most positive thing that we can do for ourselves. And, by working the steps and getting a new sponsor, I started to get in touch with the soft side of me for the first time in my life. And how long am I supposed to speak anyways? Oh, you guys are so sweet. Anyways, so I met another man. Anyways, I met another man, and we got married, and we're still married today. We just celebrated 12 years of marriage in January. Yeah, it's a miracle. Now, let's talk about this marriage. No. Let me tell you that, let's see, 4 years into our marriage, my husband got diagnosed with a cancer of the liver from hepatitis C. Now, I'm a nurse, so that's one strike against me. I got way too much information. But, the nice thing, we were both productive members of society. We both had great health insurance and all of that, and we ended up going to the best doctors we could find, to Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota, One in the morning I was wearing a sundress, drinking coffee outside in the sun, and we arrived in Rochester, Minnesota. Later that afternoon, it was 16 below zero in the middle of a blizzard. So I knew this was not going to be an easy trip. We get there, and he does the chemo, and he does all of that, and I'll just make it real short. 2 bouts of chemo treatments and 2 liver transplants later, with lots of visits to the intensive care unit. Him and I had to learn how to take our combat uniforms off. And it's been the hardest thing that both of us have had to do. Because remember, I'm the detachment queen. I know how to put my suit of armor on, and I know how to get through it. I've done it all my life. And now I'm learning how to take the suit of armor off and be vulnerable. And I'm scared to be vulnerable because my husband's not doing well. Physically, he's not doing well. So I'm learning one more time at a very, very deep level how to trust my higher power and believe deep in my soul that I'm going to be okay. And it's hard. I went to Toronto, Canada for the World Convention. About 10 years ago, I guess. It was an amazing convention. There was this workshop. I don't even remember the title of the workshop. All I remember is the speaker. And I don't even remember a whole lot of what she shared except what I'm about to share with you right now. She was sharing about, steps and, recovery and change and, all of that. And then she shared something that was so profound for me to hear. And I probably heard it a million times, but I heard it. You know how that is. And I heard her share that working the steps has taught me how to get in touch with my soft side. And I went, oh my God, how can that be? I mean, it was just like so profound for me. The steps have taught me how to get in touch with my soft side. I remember sitting in Rochester, Minnesota, and I called my sponsor, and I was pissed off, one more time, the victim. And I was saying, where's mine? Why is this happening to me? Crying the blues. And my sponsor gently, firmly, and clearly communicated with me that nothing was happening to me. That I was there for the ride. And that I was there to learn how to hold a person's hand that I loved and help this person through a horrific experience. And I went, that's selfless service. And I said, what do I have to do to be able to do that? And she says, you need to do these things. And she gave me a laundry list. And, she asked me when she first started sponsoring me, she asked me this question. She said, Diana, what is it that you want to be remembered as? And I went, God, that's such a peculiar question to ask. And I thought about it, and I said, I want to be remembered as that person that had lived her life with integrity. And she went like this. She goes, well, we have a lot of work to do, don't we? Now, that was a compliment, and I'll share with you why it was. Because we're idealistic people, every single one of us. Every single one of us love to fantasize. And I used to call them pipe dreams, but they're not pipe dreams. They're really something I think is deep within us that really we want to be that person, or we want that quality. And they're not pipe dreams. They can be a reality. And what she told me was that, the things that we hold on to the most and the things that we desire and dream about the most, we can obtain here. But it takes work. And that's what she meant, was that we got a lot of work to do, don't we? Because when shit hits the fan, like Rochester, Minnesota, what's the first thing we want to do? We want to run. I don't want to deal with this. Whoa. this is just way too much for me. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to do what it took to get past that fear or that anger or that being a victim or, all of that stuff. I didn't want to do the work, bottom line. But I showed up and I rose to the occasion and I seized the opportunity. And I started doing things that I would have never done before. And it was getting in touch with that soft part of me that I knew was there, but was so afraid to come out. And I started being there for somebody without ever thinking how this was affecting me. And that blew me away. And how I did that was working the 6 and 7 step. I first had to get in touch with what character defects were in the way of me being a spiritual being. And then once I got in touch with what character defects were in the way, I had to learn what the opposite was and start applying it in my life. And I started doing that. And a transformation has happened to this addict. Not only did it help me to get in touch with my soft side, it also helped me to get in touch with the God of my understanding. And the Just for Today was about, God's will for us becomes the true will of ourselves. And you know what? For the most part, I got to say that, my will for myself is really aligned with my higher power's will for me. I have learned how to step out of my comfort zone and step into my life and be the person that I am. I have learned how to love myself unconditionally. I have learned how to be good to Diana. I've learned how to be present in my relationships. I've learned how to be present in my life. And I've learned how to express the soft part of who I am. There's been a theme through this whole convention about a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening to me is being introduced to the true essence of who I am. Wow. Wow. When I got here, I was asked what my assets were. And the only thing that I could come up with was that I was pretty. And I was about 50 pounds lighter than I am now, and I had a good hustle. Sad state of affairs, let me tell you. And, I look back at that and I just go, wow, that's really sad. I didn't even like who I was. I only looked at what I thought I had to offer. Because that's all I was ever taught. Truly, that's what I was taught, was what I had physically, was what I had to offer. And it's no longer that way for me. Now, the guys are probably going to not like me saying this, but I don't care. Women, every single one of you, listen to me very clearly. Get your own life. Have your own hobbies. Learn what your favorite color is. Do you like to ride horses? Do you like to walk? Do you like to paint? Find out who you are. Our literature tells us that we have to expose the secrets and share about all those things that we don't want people to know. We have to share about the painful stuff in order to grow and change. But I've also got in touch with something that has been even more of a growing experience for me. When our 4-step guide came out, I was really excited to see at the end of it, it talked about listing your assets. I thought that was pretty amazing. I was sharing with you that as a newcomer, I didn't feel like I had much to offer except what I shared. And I want to share with you that I have worked the steps over and over again. And I have grown into a woman that I admire. And I want to share with you now what my assets are. And this is out of complete humility that I even do this. Because my loving God has given me the ability to be able to see the true essence of who I am by working the 12 steps. I have beautiful hair. I have a beautiful voice. I love my freckles. I love my sense of humor. I'm smart. I'm witty. I'm a joyful person to be around. I'm a good friend. I'm a good wife. I'm a good sponsor. I'm a good sponsee. I'm generous. I participate in my life today. I love who I am. I'm a great employee. I'm even a great student. You know, I haven't shared this from a podium yet, but I just got accepted and I just started a doctorate program. I'm going to be a doctor one day. Pretty amazing. But it's because I'm persistent. I know how to be consistent. And I know how to just do the grind, you know. I'm one of those women that I admire and respect. I think I'm awesome. Now, I'm not really conceited at all. Really, truly, I'm not. I'm really sharing this out of complete humility because, God, I've come a long way. I used to be that dirty, dirty dope fiend that did whatever it took. And I just look in the mirror and I go, wow, you've really... Yeah, a little note. It says, Diana, you have to stop at 11:30. Very sorry. You aren't too good. Okay. Anyway, that's all I want. I wanted to share my assets because you know what? I think it's important for us to start recognizing what's good in us. We spend a lot of time exposing the stuff. And I love Narcotics Anonymous. It's the only fellowship I go to, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. NAPOD is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 or more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to napod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.